Welcome to Alley Picked. Today we're going to make a really cool stained glass project. You may have seen one of these before. It's a stained glass kaleidoscope airplane. But I'll bet you've never seen a stained glass drone. This is my DJI Spark drone, and we're going to try to duplicate this, but from stained glass. Stay tuned. The first thing I'll have to do is come up with an actual size sketch of the drone to use as a template for the glass. Next, I'll outline the propeller. This completes the basic sketch. What I did next was use a straight edge to darken in the lines and make this a more exact copy of the drone. Normally when making a stained glass project, you want to number each pattern piece so they go back into the same spot. But since all these legs are the same, it probably really doesn't matter. Here I'm just using regular scissors instead of the foil shears which you would normally use for stained glass. I went to my scrap glass for the necessary pieces. You can use any color, but I wanted to duplicate my colors, so I tried to match them as close as possible. If you don't have any stained glass or supplies, you can always pick them up at Hobby Lobby. Using rubber cement, I'll glue the pattern pieces onto the glass. Strategically place them to avoid as much waste as possible. The glass cutter I'm using is oil-filled and it self-lubricates the cutting roller. After scoring, you can snap the larger pieces of glass by hand, but for the smaller sections, it's best to use a special tool called a breaking pliers. Sometimes for the smaller pieces of glass, I'll gently tap on the bottom of the glass to facilitate the breaking process. When you have really small pieces to snap off, it's best to use these specially designed stained glass pliers. Again, I'm laying out all the pattern pieces on the glass as conservatively as possible. When using the scoring tool or glass cutter, try to cut as close to the pattern as possible. Later we can grind off any excess, but it's best to have a close cut. That way we don't waste time grinding down the pieces. With all the pieces cut, you can see that some of them look a bit choppy. But it's grinding time, so I'll pull out the wizard. If you're going to take on stained glass as a hobby, a grinder is really a must-have tool. I think this one cost me about 150 bucks. Now this grinder uses a two-headed diamond grinding wheel, and it needs to stay water cooled, so I'll fill this reservoir with water. It uses a sponge with one end dipping into the water and the side touching up against the grinding wheel. This helps to keep it cool.
Safety glasses are a must, as there will be little bits of tiny glass flying all around. Gently grind the glass edges up to the pattern's edge. We'll do this for each and every piece of glass. Once you have all the edges ground down to the edge of the pattern, you can peel off the paper and wipe it clean. For smaller radius grinding, I'll use this top section of the grinding wheel. Next comes the edge banding. For this, I'm using a 9/64 flat U lead cane. This is probably not available at Hobby Lobby. I often order my supplies from www.globalsgs.com. When your lead arrives, it's not perfectly straight. You'll need to straighten it out. And here's how we do that. Put one end of the lead cane into a vise. With the heavy-duty pliers on the other end, slowly but firmly pull on the other end. This 3-foot piece will probably stretch about 1 to 2 inches. Then you'll end up with a much straighter piece of lead. And after stretching the lead, I like to rub it down with some fine steel wool. It makes it look clean and smooth. My soldering supplies include a soldering iron, solder, flux, and a side cutter tool. If you start in the corner, you should cut a 45-degree angle at one end. Press firmly so that the lead forms perfectly around the glass. Now take your time. When you get back to the starting point, cut another 45-degree angle so that the gap closes perfectly. Apply the flux from the bottle, or you can just brush it on. Now, when you're soldering the joint together, you have to be really careful. Don't keep the soldering iron touching the lead for more than a split second, or it's going to melt and damage the lead. When you're putting on this lead edging, you don't have to start in the corner. You can really begin anywhere. If you do start in the middle of a piece, you just cut it off straight instead of the 45-degree corner angle. With all the pieces leaded, we can begin assembling the drone. I decided to cut this additional piece for the front of the drone. I thought it would look cool. Looks like a camera. I also have 2 small wire rings which I'm going to solder at each end to hang the drone. Now, depending on how you want to hang the drone, you may need only 1 ring or possibly even 3 rings for stability, like 2 on one end and 1 on the other. I'm positioning the drone arms and then I'm going to solder them all down. Once I have them tacked in several places on both sides, I'm going to apply more flux so that a little heat with the soldering iron is going to make it flow all the way into the seam. But again, be very careful. Practice on some scrap pieces until you feel comfortable. 1 second too long and you're going to burn a hole right through your lead. To solder on the 4 props, I'm just going to solder along the seam here on the edge. Now we're going to mount the camera. After tacking on both mounting rings, our drone assembly is complete. Now here's where you have a choice. You can leave the silver color if you like it, or you can change it to black using a lead patina liquid. To avoid contaminating our bottle, we pour off a small amount. And using a very small piece of rag, dip it into the patina liquid and wipe it on the lead. This will instantly change from silver to black. Rinse it off with some cool water and a little dish soap. Dry off your drone and the project is complete.
So there's our stained glass drone. I think it looks pretty good. It was a fun project, didn't take too long. You can be as creative as you like. Why don't we go hang it up?
Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking if we could tie a string around the stomach of it.
Yeah, we're gonna hang it on our loops here. We're gonna go hang it in my office. What do you think?
Good.
All right, let's go hang it up.